Hello, everyone. This is Chris, and I am back once again with another James Bond review. Actually on time tonight. I promised you guys last week, after being late by 10, 15 minutes. I'm bang on schedule today, so let's get it done. Of course, as you've seen from the thumbnail, as you've seen from the title, tonight we are talking about The Man with the Golden Gun, which is a title almost impossible to say without bursting into song into the Lulu song. And we'll talk about the music later on in this film because it's definitely worth talking about. This is the 1974 Bond film, obviously directed for the final time, actually, by Guy Hamilton, having directed a slew of James Bond films before this one, and the second Roger Moore film. So we're going to let some people, we're going to give it about a couple of minutes before we get into the review itself, which gives me just enough time to go over the socials. Obviously, if you're a fan of The Man with the Golden Gun, even if you're not, comment and let me know what you think of this film. Let's get a conversation going because I love chatting Bond with you guys. And while you're at it, maybe is this film, let me know your favorite James Bond film and who is your favorite actor to play James Bond. Please do subscribing to the channel as well for more movie reviews, discussions, and live streams. Some big movies coming out in the next couple of weeks. I mean, I've just uploaded my Jurassic World Domination review. Domination? I don't even know what it's called. The new Jurassic World film. So I've got a review out for that on the channel, and in a week or so's time, I know the new Elvis Presley film's out. And hopefully, fingers crossed, I should be joined with a guest on that review, which should be a very, very good in-depth discussion on Elvis Presley. So watch this space for that. And you can indeed watch that space. Follow me on Twitter at Hobbit Fan Editor. There you can find all the times, days, and everything in between that I'm going to go live for all of my reviews. And yeah, okay, so that will do it for all the socials. We've got a lot to talk about, and already my main man, we've got Carl. Evening, Chris. Hope you're well. And Tuesday does not come round fast. Hang on. And Tuesday does come round fast. Oh, sorry. Yes, it does. It does. I mean, this is what, the 9th James Bond film? We're going 9 weeks on this, 2 and a bit months already, and it's just absolutely flying by, which is a good thing. Not because I want to be done with these James Bond reviews by any stretch of the imagination, but as I say, all roads lead to License to Kill on the big screen. So, just a few more Roger Moore films, and then we're finally at Dalton, and then, it's going to be a good one. It's going to be a good one. I'm looking forward to it. But we're not there yet, unfortunately. We are at Man with the Golden Gun. I don't have a plan for this one, as per usual. So we're just going to wing it. We're just going to talk about this film. So I always kind of start with my past experiences with this film. This one, for the longest time, was always the one that I was like, oh, that's the one with Christopher Lee and Nick Nack in there. So even instinctively, before I'd even watched the film, I was already aware of this film's presence and who the villains were of this thing, because, usually the villain and the henchman, especially if, they're a colourful, quirky, kind of out there villain, they're always the most memorable ones. And, Christopher Lee growing up, Lord of the Rings, which I actually watched earlier today, actually. So in a weird way, I've kind of had a Christopher Lee double feature, which is no bad thing, between Fellowship of the Ring and this movie tonight. And, growing up with the Star Wars prequels and everything, of course I knew who Christopher Lee was. And then I probably just saw clips of The Man with the Golden Gun, like countdowns, like best movie villains, best movie moments, whatever it happened to be. So I'd already kind of seen bits and pieces. And then many years ago now, when Spectre was coming out, I watched this film and I think mostly forgot about it, to be honest. And then obviously I rewatched it again last year before No Time to Die was coming out. And I had to be honest, I had mostly negative opinions on this film. And I was shocked because, in a similar way to last year, the opinions I had on Live and Let Die, which I was like, the villains are great, but the rest of the film's kind of just, it is what it is. It's not that great. Thankfully, last week I had like a completely different opinion on Live and Let Die. I still acknowledge its shortcomings, and the film does have many, but I did enjoy it last week. And not to say that I didn't enjoy Man with the Golden Gun tonight, but it mostly stayed at the level it was last year. It didn't jump way up. It just kind of stayed as it is. This is a very strange film. There's a lot of elements to there are elements to the film that I enjoy, of course, and I'll talk about those in a second, but it's kind of like a weird, I can't even talk, a weird hodgepodge different ideas and concepts that don't really mesh together and don't really make much sense with the characters. Mostly centered around Scaramanga, actually, Christopher Lee's character. So let's talk about some of the things that I did like then. Well, let's start with the villains, because that's basically my biggest positive with this film, although there are a couple of negatives to go along with it. Christopher Lee is absolutely outstanding, and of course he's got to play a villain. Apparently, was he like cousins to Ian Fleming, or second cousins, like twice removed or something? Some kind of distant relation, I think, of Ian Fleming, if I remember rightly. Or was he just good friends? Either one, I'm not sure. And apparently Fleming said that he would have been perfect to play Dr. No in Dr. No, of course. And apparently it just, well, obviously it didn't happen, but apparently Ian Fleming forgot to mention something or something like that. But the important thing is we have Christopher Lee in a Bond film playing a Bond villain, and he's great as Scaramanga. I think Scaramanga, like the concept of Scaramanga's character, is fantastic. I love when Bond goes up against someone who's kind of his equal in many ways, in terms of ability, in terms of the lifestyle. It's just opposite sides of the same coin, which is a phrase that I use quite a lot to describe hero and villain dynamics that I really like. Batman and Joker, and there's even other examples in the Bond franchise as well. Probably most notably and sort of more contemporary is Daniel Craig's Bond against Javier Bardem Silva, and very similar kind of past in many ways, but they just kind of, well, I say very similar past in the case of Scaramanga, but this is kind of the element of the character that I think is really wacky and out there and doesn't really make much sense in a way. James Bond apparently knows everything there is to know about Scaramanga, which does lead to a very humorous moment at the beginning where he goes into M's office and M opens with, "What do you know of Scaramanga?" And then Roger Moore just goes off on this huge monologue of Scaramanga's entire past history, family history, exploits, and everything like that. And they say that he grew up in a circus and he was like a trick shot. And I'm like, okay, well, it's a backstory, he's a trick shot, but the way that Christopher Lee plays it, I just don't get that impression of him being, growing up in a circus or like a carnival or something like that. And a lot of the visual elements that sort of correlate with that are, of course, I don't even know what it's like, Scaramanga's Funhouse. I don't even know what I meant to describe this thing as. This weird, wacky, topsy-turvy, literally a fun house with like visual, like illusions, and everything's kind of crooked and slanted, and you've got all of these mannequins in there, and it looks really cheap and weird. It's almost like a budget Man Two Swords or something like that. And I just don't see Christopher Lee's character, like his persona, the way he plays it, the way he is exceptionally well spoken, and the way he holds himself, and he is basically like another James Bond in many ways, but just with an extra nipple. So I just don't see him like fixating like on his lovely luxurious island base, going like, "Oh yes, and I really must hire in like a waxworks of Roger Moore's Bond." Like I just don't see that happening. Like, did he make that? Was it his fun house? And this is where I kind of got confused with the film, and it's probably just because I tuned out of it and missed a bit, or just the fact that I'm getting old and getting forgetful. Did Scaramanga make this fun house? Because he kind of defers to Knick-Knack to operate the whole fun house. And I was like, okay, so is this Knick-Knack's design? Did Knick-Knack grow up in a circus? Did he grow up with Scaramanga? I can't remember if they mentioned that in the film or not. Knick-Knack's sort of, Scaramanga's butler in many ways. He's waiting on him, is kind of his master in many ways. But Knick-Knack just takes like complete operation of the fun house, and Scaramanga, although he's of course, one of the best gunmen in the world, and he prides himself on that and his skills, he is put in a very vulnerable position by Knick-Knack. Knick-Knack sort of like locks off the gun cabinet at the beginning of the film, and he kind of puts Scaramanga's character on the same level as the person who's challenging him. And how does that challenge work? Does someone write to Scaramanga? Do they just show up on the island? For someone who's meant to be completely secret and no one knows where he is, apparently people can find him and challenge him whenever they want. I don't know how that works. Again, If I missed something, maybe I missed something. I don't know. But this like Chicago 1920s, 1930s American gangster shows up and challenges him at the beginning of the film. It's just very strange. And as I say, like the mannequins and the funhouse itself could be like an interesting, like, you know, concept for a Bond villain if it wasn't Christopher Lee's, you know, character. The way that Christopher Lee plays it just doesn't make much sense to me. I think it would just be cool if he was like a hitman in the field, basically, this kind of lone gunman, almost like a Winter Soldier kind of character. That could be really interesting. Of course, Christopher Lee could play it phenomenally. But just this whole funhouse thing just does it's kind of like something Mysterio would do, or the Riddler. You know, if we're going sort of like comic book comparisons with it, I just don't see it. And maybe you could have like a really colorful, wacky, sort of like visual illusions and everything like that, and misdirection and smoke and mirrors kind of Bond villain, and that could be really cool. You know, like a really campy villain like that that has fun houses and everything like that. But to me, the concept just doesn't really marry up with the way Christopher Lee plays it. But that is, you know, like the stuff like the flying car as well is all very silly, and it's a cool car. I like it. I know it was part of a product placement deal at the time. I think it was, is it an AMC? I think it is. I forgot the name of it. Um, and then like the wings come out, and it does lead to a funny moment actually, where you've got Britt Ekland's character, the Bond girl. She's trapped in the boot of the car, and you know she's trying to get out. By this point, the car's already taken off and is in midair, but she doesn't know this, and she's like, "James, I think the car's come to a complete stop. I'm gonna try and get out." And then she just like pops the boot, and she's in like she's high up in the sky, and she's just looking down like, "Well, I'm just gonna close this thing." I like that moment, so that's a funny moment. But I don't know, Christopher Lee in a flying car, but he's kind of a reserved man. Like, but then saying that, James Bond is, you know, a well-spoken man who goes around in flying cars all of the time. So I don't know, or invisible cars or underwater cars, you name it. Nick Nack makes for a great henchman. I absolutely love Nick Nack. The performance is great. He's kind of, you know, he's funny. He's there, and it's kind of a weird double act again between Scaramanga and Nick Nack, but by God, it's memorable and it works for me. I like that Nick Nack has sort of like the final altercation with Bond at the end, and I don't know why, even still watching it tonight, I always thought Nick Nack's fate was when Bond has like that carry case, like the suitcase that he puts Nick Nack into, and you know he's kind of carrying the case. I love when he like drops the case, he almost forgets how heavy this carry case is now that he's got Nick Nack inside, and he just kind of accidentally slams it on the floor, and you just hear Nick Nack from inside the case go like, "Ow!" That made me laugh because I don't know, just small people in cases, I guess, just makes me laugh. And then Bond sort of like carries the case out of frame, out of shot, and it cuts to because they're on a pirate ship. Like, again, this is so weird. Like, Christopher Lee has a pirate ship. I mean, the guy makes $1 million a hit, so you know maybe he's feeling frivolous and he just wants to buy a pirate ship. But then it cuts to outside, like a wide shot, an establishing shot of the ship and the camera's pulling out, and you can still hear Nick Nack's voice. So all I'm expecting to see is like a silhouette of a suitcase just go flying overboard. And they even kind of play with the idea as well a little bit as well, because when Bond comes back into the bedroom, because you know he's trying to get his rocks off, you know, he's trying to make some sweet, sweet love to Britt Ekland, and you know how she looks in this film, absolutely fair play to him. Like, you know, man's got to do what a man's got to do. And he comes back in, and she's like, "James, you didn't." And it kind of like lets you hang with it for a while, like, oh my God, did he chuck Nick Nack over the side of the boat? But then, of course, the final shot of the movie, he's in the crow's nest, isn't he? Tied up with rope. So I don't know. I think it would have been really funny if you just lobbed him overboard. Maybe that would be a little bit sinister for Bond. But speaking of Bond being sinister, you know, this film does kind of ride the line a little bit with some of the darker side of Bond coming through. Especially towards the beginning of the film, and then it kind of descends into the more sort of like campy, romantic, dare I say, silly, tongue-in-cheek Bond that Roger Moore is. And that's not a slate against Roger Moore, as I mentioned last week. Roger Moore's actually my favourite Bond. He's just phenomenal. And it's, it shows how versatile he is as an actor playing Bond, because he does show that darker side of him. And I think that darker side probably comes through more in For Your Eyes Only, but there are still elements of it in this film. When he's, I think he's interrogating, I think it's Maud Adams, isn't it, towards the beginning of the film, and he's got sort of like her arm twisted behind her back, and he says like, "I'll break your arm, give me information. You're gonna have to do better than that." He's like slapping her around and all kinds of stuff. Again, you probably wouldn't get that in a modern day Bond film now, because we can't have Bond be like a hard-edged guy who's will do anything to get the job done. That is the character that he is. I don't know if it's weird seeing Roger Moore do that. I think because the grand majority of his films, like Total Wise, he is, all the descriptions I just gave him, he is the more romantic, silly kind of Bond, which are elements that, well, I absolutely love, and I'm sure a lot of other people love him for that as well. So seeing him do the more violent stuff, that stuff works with a Daniel Craig, if they ever let him do that kind of stuff. That stuff definitely works for a Timothy Dalton's Bond. There's the bit in, I want to say, yeah, it's in Living Daylights, I think it is, where he kind of drags the woman, he like picks the woman up off the bed and like rips her like frock, like exposing her chest to distract one of the bad guys. Like, he just doesn't care. Like, Timothy Dalton's Bond, like, ruthless as fuck. Like, he'll just do whatever he wants to get the job done, which I absolutely love. But we kind of see that with Roger Moore in this one a little bit. And as a staple of the Bond character, that's cool, but it does seem a little bit mean-spirited for Roger Moore's Bond, and that's just the way he plays it. That's just, Roger Moore's natural charm coming through. But it is interesting to know. I'm not completely opposed to it being the part of the Bond character, but it does still kind of, because I haven't watched this film since last year, and I've watched a lot of other Bond films after that point, you do have to kind of reacquaint yourself, like, oh, wow, they did actually go these places with Roger Moore's incarnation at this point. I love the fist fight in the dressing room. I love a good Bond fist fight, where it's just really no holds barred and they're just going for it. It looks kinetic and everything like that. It looks like they're actually beating the shit out of each other. They're like slamming each other into like walls, into wardrobes, into mirrors and everything. It looks great. The best one, as I've always said, is probably on the train, with Red Grant in From Russia with Love. I really like the one with Sean Connery and Diamonds Are Forever, actually, in the elevator. And I really liked this one. I love that whole bit where there's the belly dancer. And he's like, what's he say? You have an amazing abdomen, which I'm still trying to work that into. Part of me always wants to say that in my personal life. I just can't do it. And no one's probably seen Man with a Golden Gun, unfortunately. So, yeah, I don't know, just like the one-liners as well in that part, where he needs to get this bullet out. She wears this bullet as like a lucky charm in her belly button, and he's trying to like reach for it, and she's like and like moves his hand, so he's kissing his way down her stomach, and then when the henchmen come in, he just like bites it, and it looks like he swallows it at one point because he's like choking on it, but that never really gets a payoff. And then she kind of screams at the end, going like, I've lost my charm, and he's like, not from where I'm standing. That's a great line. There are some truly awful one-liners and lines in this film. There's one when he walks into the fun house. I think it's towards the end. No, I think it's actually where he gets ambushed by Knick Knack and the two sumo wrestlers, which is just really random when that happens. And it looks like a kind of funfair type thing. And he's like, Grizzly Land. And I don't know if that's a play on Disneyland and he's just called it Grizzly Land, but that's really, really bad. That's a terrible line. But, it's Roger Moore, so we allow it. But yeah, on the whole, like, Roger Moore's still great. I actually did some reading, and apparently reviews were really negative towards Britt Eklund, which I'm inclined to agree with. We'll get onto her in a second. But also Roger Moore. And I don't think Roger Moore necessarily turned in a bad performance with this one. I think he hasn't quite found his groove, I don't think, yet. And he'll find that next week, when we talk about The Spy Who Loved Me, which is probably, I would say, the definitive Roger Moore James Bond film. Certainly for me. Don't get me wrong, I love View to a Kill. I love Octopussy. Octopussy is actually one of my favorite Bond films, easily in my top 10. And I'm looking forward to revisiting it actually, because I've only seen it the once. That's one of the few Bond films that I've actually only seen once, so I'm interested to see how that holds up on a second viewing. He's still finding his groove, but it's not a bad performance. Roger Moore gives it his all, in every respect. So love that. Okay, I mentioned Britt Eklund. Let's go for the Bond girls. Britt Eklund being the main one. So I know that apparently she always wanted to be a Bond girl ever since she saw the first James Bond film. And apparently Maud Adams got the call first, and it made Britt Eklund really upset because she thought, "Oh, I've lost out to Maud Adams," and then she got a call saying, "Oh, actually, no, we want you to play the main Bond girl," which is a huge mistake. Part of me thinks the role should have been reversed. Granted, Maud Adams gets, her proper time to shine once we come to Octopussy, because she's fantastic in that film, and indeed she's fantastic in this film. Roger Moore and Maud Adams have much more natural chemistry, and I just think Maud Adams' character in this is more interesting as of a character than Britt Eklund. Britt Eklund kind of falls into that same kind of role that Tiffany Case did for me in many ways in Diamonds Are Forever. And don't get me wrong, like I enjoyed Diamonds Are Forever like marginally more than I usually did, but there's some problem with Tiffany Case's character, especially towards the end, where she's just not capable, and she's just, she can't fire a gun, and she's just pratfalling and just being ridiculous. And that's kind of what they boil Britt Eklund down to. She's meant to be an agent like Bond, helping him out in the field and everything, and she's just completely incompetent. She's getting, every time she tries to do something, she'll get thrown into the boot of a car. There's the bit where she's trying to get with Bond, and then someone comes in and is like, "Oh no, get in the wardrobe." Actually, that's one of my favorite parts of the film, is where he's ready for a late night of love-ins with Britt Eklund, and then Maud Adams is about to come in, and he puts her in the wardrobe, and then he actually makes out with Maud Adams that night, and then he wakes her up in the wardrobe in the morning. Love that. Classic Bond. But yeah, she just doesn't feel capable. Like, even at the end, she dispatches a bad guy, which inadvertently, granted she probably didn't know, kind of makes the place ready to self-destruct. And then there's the bit at the end where Bond's trying to get the oh god, what's it called? I've forgotten the name. Like the energy card thing. Oh my god. The Solex. He's trying to get the Solex out, and he's like, turn the machine off, and she kind of like leans over, doesn't she, and her ass like hits a button which makes the solar thing go off and almost kill Bond. It's just like, oh, okay. And as I say, like I don't mind damsel in distress Bonds like at all. Damsel in distress Bonds like Bond girls. But just when they're like constantly incompetent, if they're incompetent at the beginning and then like grow across the film and then they actually become capable, that would be fine, because that's growth of a character. But when they're just kind of like that all the way through, I mean, her character very much in this one, Britt Eklund, is just to be seen and not heard kind of thing. Like, she is there just because she looks $1 million, and she does. She looks incredible. But with Maud Adams' character, there's just so much more nuance to the character. Where we find her character being kind of, the mistress of Scaramanga, and she really wants to get away from Scaramanga. Kind of reminds me a little bit of License to Kill, where she's, I forgot the name of the actress and the character even, but she's getting beaten up by Sanchez, and she really wants to get away from Sanchez. It's kind of that same type of thing, really. But you feel for her, and as I say, like the natural chemistry just between Roger Moore and Maud Adams is great. And then she's killed off. She plays the role of one of the Bond girls that's going to get killed, and it's such a shame because she plays it really well. I'm genuinely interested in a character, and then when we get to Britt Eklund's tomfoolery, it's just like, oh, but there's much more nuance to Maud Adams, so it is a shame, and I do kind of wish the roles had been reversed. But nevertheless, Maud Adams plays a great part in this, and a memorable character and a tragic character as well. That bit where she's kind of sat motionless in the audience, and she's been shot from afar by Scaramanga. That's a great moment, actually, where Scaramanga comes and sits next to Bond during the Thai boxing, and he's like, "Oh, it wasn't an easy shot, but it was very rewarding." And I think Bond says something like, "Oh, we've all got to get our kicks somehow," or something like that, I think he says. Let's see what else. Let's go for something that I like in this film. Some of the sets are incredible. I love I forgot the name of the ship. I'm terrible with names, guys. What is it? The HMS Elizabeth? Is it? I want to say it can. I think it's the HMS Elizabeth. It's the sunken ship, and everything's kind of off to an angle, and even the inside of the boat. And they've sort of built walkways within the slanted boat, which actually kind of levels it out so they can get about, to get to M's office in there. I love that M's in the field as well. That's quite cool that they've set this shipwreck up as kind of like their operations in the east. I just think that's quite a cool location. It's a pretty obvious location. It's not necessarily well hidden, I don't think, but I love how they've leveled everything out, and just the set looks great. How everything's off kilter. You've got characters talking to each other, but you're looking at the background and everything's kind of shifted. That's really, really fun. So I love that kind of stuff. Let's see what else. Oh, there was another sort of environment that looked really, really good. High fat's kind of pad, like where the whole film just completely derails into a kung fu movie for some reason. I actually really like the look of that place. You've got that kind of dragon statue in the water, and like the Eastern culture. It just looks really great, coming through in the architecture. But I'm all for sort of like Bond infiltrating High Fat's place and masquerading as Scaramanga. I thought that's a very Bond thing to do. But then the film just stops, and I must have missed something, because I'm like, why is Bond fighting, like karate? Why is he doing karate now? Why is he doing kung fu or karate? I'm not sure what he's doing, or judo, some form of martial art. Apparently, this was only included in the film because the whole kung fu movie craze was massive in the 70s, and Bond wanted to get in on that, because Bond is a very reactionary series, and we'll definitely see that once we get to Moonraker, which solely exists just because Star Wars was successful. And even in some respects, like the modern Bond stuff, Skyfall very much is very, very close, I would say, to The Dark Knight, in terms of its story structure and the hero and villain dynamic. And in some ways, No Time to Die is quite a lot like Dark Knight Rises to me, which we'll go into those comparisons, and we'll talk about those once we get to the Daniel Craig ones again. But yeah, the film has these weird pacing moments where I'm just kind of passively watching the film, and I don't know what's happening. I'm like, why is this happening? Why is Bond fighting these people? You've got the bit as well where the two schoolgirls who are oh God, does he say sisters or no nieces? Does he say something like that? That the guy who's like his ally, driving him around and stuff, they just take on an entire dojo, and it's great and it's hilarious and they're brilliant. But I'm just like, why is this happening? And speaking of why is this happening, another negative, J.W. Pepper, Sergeant J.W. Pepper. Now, last week, I acknowledged that they still focus on his character way too much. He exists in the film to be comic relief, and whether you find him funny or not, that's entirely up to you. I didn't mind him last week for Live and Let Die. I hated him the first time I watched him, but watching it again last week, maybe because I was mentally prepared for it and I knew it was coming, I kind of laughed a little bit more at some of his antics. But nevertheless, even last week in Live and Let Die, they still focus on his character way, way too much and keep cutting back to him. And he does outstay his welcome a little bit. But, it's in the bayou, the whole Louisiana kind of thing. He's kind of got a place there. Bringing him back for this one was a step too far. A step too far. Not to mention the massive coincidence that he just happens to run into Bond again. But he's just downright obnoxious in this one to me. No one was laughing in the cinema. Everyone just looked really, really annoyed that he was there. And not to mention in this one, he brings his wife along for the ride. So you've got her to contend with as well. There is a comedic moment in that bit, though, not necessarily with J.W. Pepper, but the whole scenario of this little kid who's trying to sell tourists this wooden elephant, and he's, negotiating and trying to come down. I do like the bit where he jumps into Bond's boat and he's like 80, and Bond's like, I'll give you does he say? I'll give you 20,000 if you can make this boat go any quicker. And the little kid hits a switch and the boat starts going quicker. And he's like, 20,000. And then Bond just like pushes him into the water. That got a laugh out of me. I completely forgot that moment, but that did make me chuckle. A few other people in the audience laughed at that as well. But J.W. Peppers is just a step too far in this film. And it's a shame because, you know, he occupies what is otherwise a pretty decent car chase. And he's loud, obnoxious. I mean, he's everything that J.W. Pepper is. But I could have done with him. I could have done without him in this film, in all honesty. And, you know, to cap off that car chase, which, you know, as I say, otherwise, you know, apart from the comic relief stuff, would be a decent James Bond car chase. I think it broke records at the time, didn't it? Guinness Book of World Records and everything. I think it was the first stunt done in a film that was presided over by a computer and everything like that. They had to meticulously plan it, and it was done in one take. I know the person who did it apparently got a 30,000 pay rise on the spot for doing it. It's incredible. The 360 corkscrew spin, so iconic to this film. And that was, you know, how I mentioned at the beginning that before I'd even seen The Man with the Golden Gun, I knew Scaramanga, I knew, well, Christopher Lee, Nick Nack, and it was the stunt, you know, it was the car stunt, the 360 spin, and it's a great stunt. But, and I love John Barry, don't get me wrong, but it was his idea apparently to add the slide whistle sound effect in there. And it does completely negate the stunt to me. When I'd seen it in clip shows and everything like that, it never played the audio from the film. It was someone talking over the top in voiceover, just saying how amazing this stunt is. You know, if it was in like a best movie stunts countdown or best movies countdown or whatever it happened to be. So I just thought it was going to be in silence, or you'd have some like James Bond music over it. But imagine my surprise when I watched this film for the first time and then that slide whistle kicks in. It's so out of place, and it does ruin the stunt because it makes what should be an exciting, thrilling James Bond moment or a dangerous James Bond moment, and it turns it into a complete joke. You start laughing at it and you focus on the slide whistle rather than actually witnessing the stunt that's happening. Going back to The Dark Knight, imagine that truck flip in The Dark Knight if it had a slide whistle. You know, the impact of that scene is where the music crescendos, cuts off, and then the truck flips in silence and we hear it crash, and you've just got the audio of the scene in there. This scene could have been perfect, you know, even if you'd have had like the James Bond theme line, when he goes over the bridge, that'd be like a fist punching moment. Or even if the sound just cut out and it was just in silence, this slow motion shot of the car going, would have been so much better. I know people that probably grew up with this film and love it for all of its faults, you know, they've come to love the slide whistle. And I'm kind of like that with a lot of films that I grew up with as well. Like, I'll forgive a lot, you know, nostalgia is a powerful thing. I never grew up with this film, so I'm kind of, reviewing this from a modern standpoint and everything, and it's just out of place to me. In a similar way to in A View to a Kill, which is a James Bond film that I absolutely love, and apparently a lot of people shit on, but, you know, I will die on that hill defending A View to a Kill. When the Beach Boys type song plays, like the surfer kind of song at the beginning, it just ruins that scene for me, and it makes it silly. A better example, actually, in Octopussy, again, a film I love, the bit where Bond's swinging through the trees and you get the Tarzan scream randomly added in. It's just could do without that stuff, and it ruins it a little bit for me. Let's see, what else can I talk about? I'm trying to think if there's anything else major I can talk about. The concept of the solar weapon, the solar laser. I get that this came out around the time, where the UK was dealing with, it was the 1973 energy crisis, I think it was. So this was, very contemporary, and that was very much used as a backdrop for the film. And, I'm fine with integrating that, but what does Scaramanga want with that? Like, he's a hired hitman that jets all around the world for a price. He's the best at what he does. And then he's kind of holed up on his vacation island, but with a laser weapon. Like, does he want some kind of monopoly in terms of energy and everything like that everyone will pay him more money and come to him because the world's low on energy, and he's basically got the code to create infinite amount of it with the solar energy. Maybe he mentions that because you've got that dinner scene, and I do like that bit where they sit down. And again, the elements where it's that Scaramanga is an equal to Bond, and that they're serving drinks and they're serving Bond and Britt Ekland food at the table, and Bond says like, "Oh, I thought, he drinks the wine, doesn't he? He goes, oh, it's reminiscent of a blah 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 blah," and then Scaramanga cracks out a pen and goes, "Oh, I must add it to my wine cellar," and it's just like, yeah, I like that stuff. We're the best, we're titans, and they have that jewel outside as well. Those are the elements of the villain hero dynamic that I really like in this film. But then it's just like all, as I mentioned, like the wacky stuff in the funhouse. But yeah, why does he need like a Death Star laser? I know that Death Star lasers are kind of a staple of the James Bond franchise. I'm aware of that, but why does Scaramanga want it? Because this thing doesn't look portable. This thing is sort of like attached to the island, and apparently no one knows where Scaramanga is. Like he's meant to be this sort of like invisible man type character where no one knows where he is at any point. So if no one knows where to find him, then why does he need a giant Death Star laser on the island? Maybe he mentions that in the film and I missed a line explaining what he actually wants to do with it. Truly, I am the man with the golden gun. And it's like Peter Griffin in Family Guy going like, he said it. He said the line. It's just a bit weird for me. I don't know. The golden gun prop itself, I'm not talking about the laser now. I'm talking about the actual pistol. Incredible looking. I know that it's on a bunch of like best movie props, best weapons and everything like that. And quite rightly so. I love that. So they built a version apparently that was just like a complete version that could fire blanks. And they built two versions, I think, that could be assembled with the, you've got the pen, you've got the cigarette lighter and the case and the cufflink. And I love when Christopher Lee's like putting it all together. It's just so cool. I love stuff like that. And then apparently a third one went missing, and it's valued at around £80,000 apparently. I thought it might be more than that actually, a movie prop, but I don't really know what movie props go for when they're auctioned off. But someone must have stolen it. It's not accounted for. Oh God, could you imagine if you had that? Like you just like rest knowing you go to bed sleeping at night knowing that you have one of the golden guns, and obviously you can't tell anyone about it, but you've got it. I don't know. I think that'd be kind of cool. So it's a fair play to the person who got away with it. Maybe you kind of go with the Indiana Jones perception, like it belongs in a museum, and maybe it does, but currently it's in someone's private collection. We don't know. I often think about that. Like I think of movie props and things like that. Weird tangent, but even like film reels, like lost footage of stuff. The ending of The Shining, apparently it's on like a bunch of film reels that are unaccounted for, people's private collections and whatnot. Who knows where they could be anywhere. I just find that really interesting with stuff like that. Let's talk the music then. So John Barry obviously come back to do the score for this one. Apparently he only had 3 weeks to do the score, and because of that the score suffered, and John Barry's gone on record saying that it was his least favorite score that he did. In my opinion, hopelessly trying to study music, the fact that anyone can score a single song, let alone composing an entire score for a film in 3 weeks, I mean, that deserves praise to me. Granted, you could probably argue there's not many defining themes in the film. You've got the orchestral version of The Man with the Golden Gun, which is great when that plays throughout the film. And I love when the Bond films do that, where they actually utilize the main theme within the score itself. It just links the two really closely together. I like when they can do that. But yeah, not much else of the score kind of stood out to me. It's a Bond score, definitely. Of course, it's going to be with John Barry, and I wouldn't say it's awful. I've never listened to the soundtrack on its own merits, so I can't really judge. Lulu obviously got the main gig for the theme tune for this one. It's a theme that's kind of grew on me. It's probably the sleaziest Bond song out of all of them, and the lyrics written by Don Black are absolutely ridiculous. The lyrics to this song are horrendous, horrendously bad. just like lyrics trying to like cram in there to fit into the tempo and the beat of the song. And as people have said, it's just an extended innuendo all the way throughout the entire song. And it's like, who will he bang? He's gonna shoot them with his gun. And it's like, I get it. It's a dick. I know what you're trying to say. It's just, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. But the song itself is very catchy. It's very brash, and as I said, quite sleazy, which kind of matches the Guy Hamilton's Bond films. To be honest, they're all quite very sleazy, especially Diamonds Are Forever. In terms of how it feels, I mentioned that when I watch that film, it feels quite cheap, and you just kind of want to have a shower after watching it. In some respects, in that film, it's kind of the same with this one too. The person who originally got the shot at the song, and there is a version of this which I recommend everyone listening to, which is actually my current poll on Twitter. So I'm actually going to bring up my Twitter handle right now. I just throw out fun sort of like Bond polls and Bond ranking stuff in between. You can follow me right there, go across the bottom of the screen. And currently, I've asked you the question, who had the better theme song for The Man with the Golden Gun? Was it Lulu or was it Alice Cooper? I absolutely love the Alice. I mean, I'm a massive Alice Cooper fan anyway, but I love The Man with the Golden Gun by Alice Cooper. Part of me thinks that should have been the main theme. There's kind of like a weird, not sci-fi, but there's a part of the song. It's in like the bridge of the song. If you've listened to it, you know what I'm talking about. It goes like ooh, and goes like into this like weird, kooky kind of sound to it in the middle. And that to me fits more like the Scaramanga's Funhouse, like a weird, wacky, topsy-turvy kind of world with like this weird, quirky song that's playing. I think Alice Cooper absolutely nailed it. I don't know if he produced the song before seeing the film or if he produced it after seeing the film. I don't know how it worked. But it's just a great song. It's got a great riff, and it builds to this kind of like frenzied crescendo at the end. I really like it. You can find it on the album Muscle of Love. It's on Spotify as well. I think it would have worked really well. I don't know how easy it would have been for John Barry to utilize elements of that within the actual score itself. And I think that Lulu's version lends itself more to that big band Bond kind of sound, and the slower, more emotional strings version of the song that kicks in that Barry uses. I absolutely love it. It works really, really well, and I do kind of get a kick of it playing. But what's weird about this song is that, does this song exist as an in-universe song? I kind of have that a little bit. I think it's in Octopussy where there's a snake charmer and it's playing like the flute or whatever it happens to be. And he plays the James Bond theme. So now I'm like, right, okay, so the James Bond theme exists within universe now. And you kind of have it with The Man with the Golden Gun, especially at the beginning, in the opening scene where you've got the guy who's challenging Scaramanga, and he's walking throughout the funhouse. And then all of a sudden, this kind of like Old West honky-tonk piano version kind of starts playing of like this ragtime kind of thing of The Man with the Golden Gun. And I didn't remember that. And I was like, okay, so is this song actually playing within the funhouse? Like, is Scaramanga a musician? Is Nick Nack a musician? Who produced this song? Did Scaramanga have to reach out to the mainland to musicians to make himself a theme song that will play in his funhouse? My brain thinks of these things, and it shouldn't think of these things. And I'm going to stop talking about that stuff now because it's not even worth mentioning. But yeah, check out the Alice Cooper version if you haven't heard that one. I think it's a really, really strong contender. And I always find like the unused Bond themes just a fascinating rabbit hole to go down. And if you can find the songs as well and just kind of imagine what the film would have been like, because the main Bond theme is important. It's important to the music throughout the film, or it should be. There's a great one that I can't wait to talk about once we get to For Your Eyes Only as well with Blondie. I thought it might have been you, Cole. Yeah, I don't know how many votes I've got on there at the moment. It's probably just the one. Not many people follow my Twitter at the moment. Hopefully they will. But Cole says, yeah, he voted for Alice Cooper, I think. Yeah, maybe the Lulu one would have been better served as like the closing theme. Actually, I forgot to mention that. I completely forgot that the end credit song of Man with a Golden Gun is like a variation. I thought they just completely, replayed the main theme, but there's like an alternate version at the end that starts with like good night, good night. And I completely forgot that they changed the version for the credits. That was kind of cool because I would have only have heard that when I watched it. I think I've seen Man with a Golden Gun twice now before this, so this was my third time seeing it in general. But I kept forgetting that there was a different version, so I want to listen to that different version now. I think it's similar when you get to Moonraker. You have like the main Shirley Bassey version, and then you have like a disco version of the Shirley Bassey version at the ending credits. So it's like just a slight little tweak. But once we get to For Your Eyes Only, and we talk about the Blondie one, that's going to be really interesting because I love that one. But then I also love the is it Rita Coolidge? Was it? I'm trying to think. Was it Rita Coolidge? No, that was. Hang on. No, Sheena Easton. What am I talking about? Sheena Easton, For Your Eyes Only. I love that one too. So that's going to be an absolute dilemma when I put that vote out there because I wouldn't even know how to vote on that one. I love both of them. Have I said everything that I can on this film? I'm trying to think if there's any other major scenes in the film that kind of stand out to me. Talked about the car chase, the Jordan. I think that's pretty much it. I mean, I don't want to drag this out longer than it needs to be. So I guess final thoughts for me on The Man with the Golden Gun. It's a weird film. It's a weird hodgepodge of ideas that I don't think come together. And there's some really weird, awkward bits in the film. The bit where the film just completely derails into like the ninja, like the martial arts territory. It's just totally random, just comes out of left field and doesn't really feel like it needs to be in the film and doesn't really drive the plot on all that much. Scaramanga as a character, the concept of him of being this man who is the equal to Bond, who's got a vendetta against Bond, who, is a bullet with his name on it, essentially, is almost, pretty much equally matched to Bond, if not slightly better. I really love that idea. The scenes where they're actually talking at the table and, Christopher Lee's sharing that screen time with Roger Moore. Great stuff. I just don't think the wacky fun house of misadventures fits with Christopher Lee's character. And I know they try and write it in and he's, his mum was a snake charmer or something, I think he says, doesn't he? And he was trained as a trick shot. And he was the best shot by the age of 10. Then he was recruited by the KGB as like a marksman or something like that. Like, I know they've written it into the character, but that whole backstory just doesn't come through with the way that Christopher Lee presents it and kind of acts as the character. I don't think you need all of that weird backstory. Just have him be a rogue agent in the field who's really, really good. Also, I forgot to mention as well, like the duel between, when Roger Moore and Christopher Lee are stalking through the funhouse at the end, sort of like the final duel between Bond and Scaramanga. That was a lot shorter than I remembered it, and I love the whole cat and mouse thing. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. I love the whole cat and mouse thing, and it is very tense, despite the funhouse idea being really very silly. But it went a lot quicker than I thought at the end. I was expecting like a much longer, sort of like cat and mouse thing. But apparently the original version was longer than what we see in the final film. And apparently you can see some of those additional pieces of footage during that sort of cat and mouse chase in the movie trailer, which, I haven't checked out. So I'm definitely going to have to check that out at some point just to see what kind of stuff they would have cut. So, J.W. Pepper is just really annoying in this film and kind of really bogs down that middle action scene. I'm not a fan of Britt Eklund. Nothing against her in real life. I just don't think the character's particularly well written. But I do really like Maud Adams' character. And it's just a shame that the roles couldn't have been switched, to give Maud Adams more screen time. But at least she gets more screen time when we come to Octopussy. I will say that that's the whole element of Bond recasting actors as different characters is always very strange to me, but I know it's not unheard of. Of course, you have Charles Gray, who played Henderson. Was it Henderson? I'm forgetting the name now. Pretty sure it's Henderson in You Only Live Twice, and then playing Blofeld in Diamonds Are Forever. I forgot the name of the actor, but the one who plays the villain in Living Daylights, I know, comes back in one of the Pierce Brosnan films as a completely different character. So I know it's not unheard of, but I just think it's very strange. I just think it's really strange. Final thoughts. Yeah, I love the villains. Scaramanga and Knick-Knack are great and really, really memorable. But that's about it. And that's so this has kind of stayed where it has always been for me. And apparently the film did receive really mixed to negative reviews, and it didn't make anywhere near as much money as Live and Let Die did. And there was even talks at the time that the franchise could have been in jeopardy after this film. It's worthy to note as well that this was the last one that Albert Broccoli and Harry Saltzman were joint producers on. I think Saltzman sold his 50% stake. I don't know if he was like in debt. I think I read somewhere he racked up like a whole bunch of debt, so he sold his stuff. I don't know if that was sort of like during the making of this film, if he made that decision, or based on the diminishing returns of this one and the more mixed reviews, maybe he panicked and was like, I want to cash my chips before there aren't any chips, basically. I don't know. But yeah, that'll kind of do it, I think. Really, really quickly, I'm just going to answer any comments that come in. Carl's asked the question, what's your take on the news coming out? The Joker sequel is going to cast Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn, and it's going to be a musical. I did not hear the thing that it's going to be a musical, and that's now made me very, very terrified. I was going to say on my Joker review, but it's on a channel that we shall not talk about anymore. So I'm going to say it right here. But actually, I did pitch, or I have pitched a sequel. I don't want to, first and foremost, I don't want a sequel to The Joker. I think The Joker is an excellent standalone film. I think doing a sequel will ruin it, and this sort of the ambiguity of the ending of Joker. It really doesn't need a sequel. It's a perfect standalone film and a really good origin story. A take on the origin story for the character, and it did it in a different way that we haven't really seen before. But if a sequel is going to be happening, and of course it is, because Joker made a shit ton of money on a fairly modest budget and won all the Oscars, so of course, Warner Brothers are going to want to push for a sequel. But if a sequel is going to happen, this is how I pitched it. It would be a cross between One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Silence of the Lambs. I would have it be exclusively set in Arkham Asylum, and I would show that conversation. I would introduce Dr. Harleen Quinzel and have the therapy sessions. And whilst the first movie was basically an origin story for Arthur Fleck becoming the Joker, the sequel, through the Joker Arthur's conversations and his manipulation, the sequel would kind of be in many ways like a companion piece to the first one, but it would be an origin story from Dr. Harleen Quinzel into Harley Quinn. And by the end of the film, you have full costume Joker, you have full costume Harley Quinn, and there's your movie. So you're kind of repeating the first film in terms of its structure, I guess, in terms of what narratively what it's trying to set out to do, but it's a fresh character. You're not like tampering with the Joker's, what was established with the Joker in the first one. You're just kind of continuing it. We're just seeing him mentally get inside the head of someone, corrupt someone, and keeping it exclusively in Arkham would be really cool. We've never really seen much of Arkham Asylum before, so that's where the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest element comes into it, I guess. And you could even kind of say like Nurse Ratched kind of corrupting and psychologically influencing a lot of the inmates in there, like she does with Brad Dourif's character in that film, which is really, really tragic. You could kind of have the Joker almost be that Nurse Ratched character trying to get inside the head of Dr. Harleen Quinzel, or maybe there's another doctor in there who's kind of a villainous one who the Joker's trying to get inside the head with. But this would be like the kind of, and the Silence of the Lambs comparison is that Joker would be like Hannibal Lecter, like the Hello Clarice, and then Clarice Starling would be like a budding, up and coming Dr. Harleen Quinzel. And by the end of the film, I think actually in the Hannibal books, she falls in love, doesn't she, with Hannibal. So again, like a similar comparison there. By the end of the film, they're an item, and they see eye to eye, and yeah, that's how I would pitch a sequel. Twitter has already labeled it Ha Ha Land. God, I don't want it to be a musical. I really don't want it to be a musical. That's just gonna ruin the first film to me. Maybe it will be sort of like a quirky, random. Maybe maybe it could even be a good film as like a standalone thing. But I think tying it in with the Joker is a mistake. Now, if it was exclusively a Harley Quinn film they were doing and they wanted it to be a musical, sure, I think that'd work well. But oh boy. In terms of Lady Gaga, in talks to play Harley Quinn, if it's going to be a musical, then makes sense. But Lady Gaga's not a bad actress, all things considered, and I think she could maybe play a good Harley Quinn. I don't know whether she could have that dynamic between a Dr. Harleen Quinzel and the Harley Quinn. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. If it's a musical, I'm not optimistic, but I'm interested to see. I'll wait for a trailer. I need to wait for more information to come out. I know it's the same director and writer, I believe. So if he's got an idea for it, and I really like what he did and the direction that he took the first film, and the journey he took us on, and showing us the journey of Arthur Fleck to the Joker, I think it was very well handled, very well done, very emotionally impactful, and relevant in many ways with a lot of things that people go through. And I just hope he can bring that same element to the sequel and not make it just quirky for the sake of quirky, but actually have some bite to it. Have that same kind of 70s Taxi Driver aesthetic to it as well. If he's got that, then great. Carl, her Top Gun song is awful. The one bad thing about that movie. It has grown on me more the more times I've heard it. But I mean, comparing it to Take My Breath Away, it's not a patch on that at all. The chord progression to her one is actually, I mean, it's a chord progression you've probably heard in 1,000 songs. So it's not a really inspired song in terms of the writing of it. She's got a phenomenal voice. I've always said that about Lady Gaga. And speaking of Bond, actually, tying it back into Bond, I would still love to see Lady Gaga have a crack at a James Bond song. I genuinely really would. Now she's worked with Hans Zimmer on the Top Gun 2 soundtrack, then maybe if Hans Zimmer comes back to score another James Bond film, maybe you'll get her in. I don't know. But I do really like the orchestral version of Hold My Hand from the new Top Gun film. And when that comes in, it was very emotional when you have the full orchestra version. Again, I know as a song in terms of how it's orchestrated and the chord progression, how it's written, it is very similar to a lot of other songs. I think the song from Sunshine is the one that a lot of people have compared it to that I've heard, and it basically is exactly the same structure as that song. But yeah, I think that's everything, unless we've got any other comments. I always kind of end these reviews now with catching up what's going on in the movie world. Maybe I should introduce a second show in the week. And I think I talked about this last week where I kind of recap all the main talking points that I want to talk about. But I like talking with you guys, I like, touching base with you guys. So it's fun. I like talking Bond, and then it's always good to, stay up to date with everything. I am going to round off though right now because I do actually have some guitar practice to do tonight because I haven't done hardly any today, and I really need to correct that fact. So please do consider subscribing to the channel for more movie reviews, discussions, and live streams. As I mentioned, films are coming out much more regularly now, and Elvis Presley is one that I'm really looking forward to. I got a clip for that film ahead of Jurassic World, I think it was, and I'm really liking what I've seen from behind the scenes as well and the performances. Still don't know what accent Tom Hanks is trying to do. That's very random. But as I said, hopefully, fingers crossed, I might have a guest on that one. There will be a bit of a time difference because they're actually from the States. So I'm going to have to work that out. So it could be a really random time that I go live. But it's one to watch out for. And obviously, for more information, follow me on Twitter, where I'll give you all that information of when I'm going live, what time I'm going live, and everything. So you can follow me there at Hobbit Fan Editor. Next week, this is going to be a juggernaut. We're talking about The Spy Who Loved Me, arguably the most defining Roger Moore film of his entire era. That's obviously the 1977 film. I will be back next week. I can't believe we're almost at the tail end of June already. It's incredible. Tuesday, the 21st of June. That's going to be 11 p.m. again. If I am going to be slightly later, I'll let you guys know on Twitter, but I'm pretty sure that I should be bang on at 11 again next week. In the meantime, again, let me know what your favorite James Bond film is and who your favorite actor to play Bond is. And for today's conversation, if you're just discovering this after the fact in the comments, do let me know what you think of The Man with the Golden Gun. Was I too harsh on it tonight? Do you really like it? Are you kind of in between? Let's get the Bond discussion going, because it's not going away for any time soon. We're in this until October, and I'm loving every second of it. So that'll do it for me tonight. Big thank you to Carl for jumping in the comments once again. Thank you for your viewership, as always, my friend, and I hope you're doing good. Stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video, whatever it might be. Maybe it'll be one before next week, but for right now, pencil it in. Spy Who Loved Me. It's going to be a good one. Have a good night, everyone, and I'll catch you guys soon. Take care.